PR Connections Radio presents. This show is brought to you by Paid Per Letter. Write letters and make a difference. paidperletter.com/Uncle Dan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we are interviewing Nancy. She's an amazing person, and she's going to introduce herself, and then we're going to get into some Q&A with Nancy.
Great. Well, thanks, Basma. I'm delighted to be here. My name's Nancy Gabriel. I am a mediator. My company is called Mediation Around the Table. I help generally couples, families, basically anybody who's in conflict to come to their own resolution. I've been doing this for more than 12 years, and I absolutely love my job.
That's amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you did before you got into this?
Sure. So I was a paralegal for many years, and then I sort of took an early retirement because I had elderly parents who were ill, and I had a husband who was ill. And unfortunately, they passed away, the three of them, first my dad, then my mom, then my husband, in a 22-month period. And right after my husband died, my stepdaughter sued me in probate court for my share of the family business. And it devastated me, not only emotionally, but financially. We ended up resolving it out of court. I forgave her, long ago forgave her. She's not in my life. But after we reached a settlement, I literally sat down at my computer and I typed, "How do families resolve conflict?" And the word mediation came up. And I thought I knew what mediation was. I thought it was strictly a tool for landlords and tenants, but turns out it's a tool for everyone who has a conflict. And so I started my training in 2010, did my internship in 2011, and I got my divorce certification from a very prestigious program the beginning of 2012. And then I opened up my doors to private practice. And it turns out that it is the most perfect fit for me. Like I said, I love helping people. I love my job. And it blended my legal background with my life experience and just my ability to listen as a human being. And that's me.
Wow, that's an amazing story that you just shared. And that's what led you eventually into creating the mediation around the table that you have. Okay. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. It's like I said, I help people resolve conflict. The bulk of my practice is divorce and custody and family issues. And the reason for that is because when I first started in Southern Nevada, people didn't even know what mediation was, let alone that it's an alternative to expensive lawyers and strung out protracted litigation. So I now fast forward 12 years and people know more about mediation. I help people. I first off do an initial consultation. I do it virtually. There's no charge. And the purpose for that initial consultation is for me to explain the process to them. And more importantly, listen to what their concerns are and what their goals are. And then if they decide to hire me, then I move forward. I have them sign an agreement. We meet in person. And then once they come to a resolution of their particular conflict, then I also write a settlement agreement, document that I send out in draft form by email. And once all the parties are ready to sign, I have them come in and sign in front of my notary. And that, in essence, is a binding legal contract. If it's a situation where the family court is involved, then there's steps beyond that. So I explain all of that in the initial consultation.
Yeah, and thank you for explaining that here as well, because some people still don't know what that process would look like either. And you specialize in mediation for divorce, separation, custody, and family issues. Is that the scope of it?
No, I have done business mediations. I have done what I call business prenups for people who are considering starting a business with other people. And we sit down and we talk about who's going to do what and what their expectations are. I've also worked with people that are currently in business but aren't getting along as business partners to see if we can help figure out how to move forward for the benefit of their business and to repair their relationship, and also ending businesses where one partner might be buying out another, working on things like that. So in essence, mediation works for any conflict as long as the people in the conflict are willing to, in essence, come to the table. Hence the name of my business, Mediation Around the Table.
I love that.
Thanks.
A certain approach that you take for mediation that's different from traditional legal practices. That,
I love that question, Basma. Nobody's ever asked me that question. My approach is to ask questions. And, I like to start with the things that I know are not as conflict laden as it might be later in the conversation, so that the parties have some measure of success as we move forward. And so a lot of the questions I ask are things that they've already thought about or talked about with each other, but sometimes they're at an impasse. And then I have a whole toolbox filled with ways to help people get beyond their impasse. For example, I might say, Basma, what's it going to take for you to move forward and agree on this particular issue? Or I might separate the parties and talk privately with them and then bring them back together and see where they're in alignment and where they're not. A lot of what I do is impulsive because I'm listening to what they're saying and then reacting.
Right. That makes sense. Speaking of examples, do you have a specific example of how, it's something memorable that's a success story that you've dealt with?
Oh, so many. Well, in the impasse department, I'll just elaborate on what I started to tell you. I had a couple, they were getting a divorce. They had one child. They had mostly everything figured out, particularly the difficult things, which in my opinion are the custody matters, because the kids don't have a voice in this. And so I need to advocate for the children. And they did really well with their little boy. They got stuck on who gets to claim their son as a dependent on their income tax returns. And the husband just dug his heels in and said, I'm paying child support, I'm claiming him. And the wife equally pushed back, and I could see that there was going to be no progress made. So this was the situation where I separated them. And I sent the wife to the lobby of my office, and I sat down with the husband. And the first thing I did was sort of reaffirm his position. I wanted him to know that I heard him. So I get what you're saying is you feel entitled to claim him as a dependent because you're paying child support. Yes. And, I could see his body language relax because he knew I'd listened. And Then I said, this seems to be the only issue that is preventing the two of you from moving forward in your lives. And I always say, look, you may no longer be a couple, but you're always going to be a family. And I said to him, what's it going to take for you to sign on the dotted line and move forward with your life? And he thought about it. And this is another tool I use, which is difficult for me, silence. So I just sat back, and a minute can seem like an hour in that moment. And finally he said that he would be willing to alternate claiming their son as a dependent on their income tax returns. And I said, if you're willing to do that, I think I can convince her, your soon-to-be ex, to accept that. And I had them switch seats, and he went out in the lobby, and I brought her back in, and I, reiterated her position a little bit. And then I said, I think I can convince him to alternate with you if you're willing to do that. And she said, if that's what it takes to get this done, I'm willing to do that. And then we were done.
Who called you in to that specific situation for you to be the mediator there?
It's interesting that you say this. I had spoken at a workshop, and she was attending the workshop, the wife, and then she reached out to me after.
Oh, I love that, because usually there's some misconceptions that people might have. Can you tell us a little bit more about any misconceptions that you've dealt with?
Okay, great, sure. First off, Nevada is a no-fault divorce state, and I'm going to address these questions mostly in terms of divorce because I can talk better about that. So always, virtually always, one spouse is driving the divorce bus and the other spouse is sort of, sitting midway. They don't want the divorce. They're not really kicking and screaming. They recognize that they have to do it, but they don't have to like it. And what I tell them is time helps. And sometimes I can see where one party is really rushing it and the other party's really reluctant. And I'll slow that rushing party down. I'll say, you know what, I'm booked for the next 2 weeks. Let's schedule something in 3 weeks. And believe me, it's amazing how the passage of time just sort of softens things for them.
Yeah, because with time, you get more time to think about things,
Right.
You're exposed to new information that you probably didn't know before.
Right. And, I'm not here to take a side. I'm neutral. The only side I take is the side of the children. And I'm very clear about that from the initial consultation forward. And, unless they're older teenagers, which happens, and I sometimes meet with families in that respect, or sometimes just the kids. But typically when they're younger kids, I want to make sure that their needs are covered, and their needs are covered not just today, but moving forward in a way that gives flexibility as the kids get older.
Right. So can you give me an example of, the benefits of choosing mediation over litigation? Tell us a little bit more about the differences between those as well, please.
Sure. Lots and lots of benefits. Obviously, the first benefit is financial. Mediation is a fraction of the cost of litigation, or even just retaining lawyers and then settling. Number two is time. And mediation is a much more efficient process. I have somebody that's coming into my office on Monday, and the wife is moving out of the country in 2 weeks. We can get this done. Lawyers cannot. And the third thing, and I'm going to sound like I'm bashing lawyers, and I kind of am. In a family court situation, I think they tend to stir a pot that doesn't need to be stirred. So if your lawyer, Basma, has a history with your partner's lawyer, then those two lawyers are going to want to posture with each other and prove, well, I'm smarter than he is, or I'm smarter than she is. And who pays for that posturing? The clients. And I cannot tell you how many times I have mediated with people who started out with lawyers and then came to me later and said, why didn't we come to you first? And this is part of getting the word out that mediation is an alternative. It's not for everybody. And I tell people in the initial consultation, if you need to be right, then mediation won't be a good fit for you. If you're of the spirit of compromise, then we can help.
In that situation, for that success story that you shared, did they have both a lawyer for litigation and a mediator at the time?
They did not have lawyers. They didn't need lawyers. At the end of the process, and this is a little more detailed than I think you asked, but after my clients sign the settlement agreement, I typically send them to a paralegal, a guy who's been helping my clients for about 10 years. And he prepares the paperwork that gets filed with the court, and he attaches the signed and notarized settlement agreement to that paperwork. And then he electronically files on their behalf with the court. So nobody needs to go to court. I'm not anti-lawyer, Basma. I tell people all the time, if you want to have a lawyer review the document before you sign it, great. If you want to have a lawyer sit in on the mediation, which I've done upon occasion, great. It's more costly, but whatever gives you peace of mind and whatever makes you feel comfortable signing at the end of the day, I'm in favor of that. My entire family are lawyers and judges and paralegals, and I worked for lawyers for many years. They do a job that's necessary and they have their place. I just think like I said earlier, in a family situation, sometimes they make it worse.
The reason why I was bringing that up is because when you were talking about the mediator, it just made me feel like anytime there is a lawyer involved, there should always be a mediator involved as well. Like I felt like it would be a good mix, but
Right.
the fact that you just need a mediator sounds good too. A mediator does sound similar to a psychologist almost, or a therapist. Like a they're helping mediate situations, just like a psychologist or a therapist would mediate a certain issue as well.
Mm-hmm. The big difference is, as a mediator, I'm not the decision maker. My clients are the decision makers. When you go to a therapist, the therapist might tell you, try this, try that. Same with a lawyer, but I don't. I'm not a therapist.
Oh, so you don't solutions? You didn't offer that solution. It was your client that offered the solution. Oh no, you offered.
Brainstorm solutions, and I might say that this particular solution has worked for other clients of mine in the past, but I don't have the right to tell my clients what to do.
Right. Okay. From my experience learning about psychologists and therapists, they also do something similar where they have a framework where they ask the client, what do you think would be the best solution to this? And then they come up with solutions. And then they end up answering their own questions most of the time by themselves. So for those people that are currently considering getting a mediator, what's some advice that you would give them if they were to get a mediator?
Have a spirit of compromise. Know that you are not going to get everything you want. Be willing to, try new things or take a baby step. I'm a big believer in baby steps. So, and, do your homework, see who you connect with, interview more than one person. I recognize that I'm of a certain age and type that I might not be approachable or agreeable to everybody. So, do your homework. This is too important to just, close your eyes and pick a name out of Google and move forward.
Okay, so you're saying they should research. I feel like since you go off of facts and you just give a few options and alternatives, in the situation, I'm going to go back to that situation that you mentioned with the wife. Yeah, the wife chose you in that situation, right? So, and the husband, would he have been able to get his own mediator in that situation, or is there only one mediator per
There's
situation?
only one mediator, and I'll tell you why. Because we are neutral. He could have had his own mediator, and the reason why I do these initial consultations, only one person calls me initially, but when I do these initial consultations, they last about 30 minutes. Like I said, no charge. That's for both parties or all the parties to get a feel for who I am and what I do and how I can help. Then they decide together whether they want to hire me or not.
Right. Okay. And that makes sense. Do you have any partnerships that Mediation Around the Table is currently doing or has done with organizations like Adam's Place?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't want to spend the whole time talking about me. Adam's Place is a nonprofit. It helps children deal with loss, the grief of the loss of a parent or a sibling generally. And it's a place I've been volunteering at for 6 years. I don't work with the children. I work with the adults. So the parents bring their children to Adam's Place, and then they leave them. The kids are organized by age group. They have littles, middles, and teens. And I sit with the parents, and we talk about challenges that they're experiencing with their kids, helping their children and themselves cope with grief. As I said initially, I'm a widow. I understand how grief is processed differently with every single person. And so when I'm sitting and talking with the adults, I want to make sure that they understand that they're in a safe place to share.
I love that. I think that's very important too for certain, almost everybody, honestly, to just have a support system. And if they don't have one, they can do something similar to that. Speaking of which, is there only a certain type of person or situation that a person's going through that is being helped in that program, or can it be anybody?
It can be any child. It's geared towards children. It's free. I think we should tell the website at some point for Adam's Place. They have session. They're always looking for volunteers, and they train their volunteers. But as far as the actual program, it's geared entirely towards children. I think it starts at age 5 and it goes through age 18. And they have 3 locations: one in Henderson, one in Summerlin, and one in Centennial Hills. And, you go on the website, you see the dates, you sign up, and then you can go back. There's 4 sessions. It's once a month for 4 months that you can go back and repeat. During COVID, I had people come back 3 times because their kids were getting benefit out of it. And actually, so were the adults.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question, because you said it helps children. So it's not just only under 18, the adults are getting, do they get to be part of the programs, or can someone above 18 be part of those programs too? Do you know?
The adults it's a different type of program. It's not as structured, at least the adults that I work with, although we do talk about what the kids are going to be talking about that time. For example, one of the sessions is called Shoulda, Woulda, Coulda. And it's about children dealing with guilt and regret. You get a little kid who says, if I only would have gotten better grades, my daddy wouldn't have gotten cancer. Or if only I went to bed on time, my mom wouldn't have gotten killed in a car accident, or whatever the situation is. So the volunteers, the facilitators for the children, work on age appropriate activities for something along those lines. And I talk with the adults and I say, have your children expressed any guilt, any regret? And then I throw it out to the other adults and I say, if you're experiencing a challenge, can you share some success with the other parents? And then I sit back and listen, and they connect with each other. And that connection to me is the most magical thing.
That's beautiful. Do you feel like you're almost a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor, or even a mediator in those situations as well?
A little bit. I think it's more about empathy and sympathy and compassion for me than anything else. I think my mediation experience helps me move the conversation along. But otherwise, I think this is more about humanity and not a professional thing. And I hear the most horrendous, sad, heart-wrenching stories over the years. And yet I walk out of there every time uplifted by these adults who are giving of themselves to benefit their children. I can't even come with the right words. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah. And I just looked up earlier when you were talking about this Adam's Place. The site is adamsplacelv.org. I'm sure they have as well, and it says that they help children, teens, and families. So it's not just like you said, that a lot of different ages are also helped in that program as well, but primarily children and teens.
Right. And you get let's say there's a 12-year-old girl whose father died, and none of her friends have lost their dad. She's the only one. And then she comes to Adam's Place, and there's 2 other girls her age that have lost their dads. It's an immediate sense of belonging and connection that's just indescribable.
It's beautiful. And I love that there's organizations out there doing that, and also helping those that sometimes they don't have support systems that are in those types of organizations. So it's beautiful.
And it's free.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. And it's also free. I love that. Those type of, is it? I think it's a nonprofit, 501c3.
Yeah. And I just wanted to do one other pitch. I got an email today that the Henderson branch, they were unable to renew their lease at their prior location, and they are looking for space. And forgive me for looking down for a minute, but they're looking for a location that would have 4 rooms available once per month in the evening from 4:30 to 7:30. For groups to meet, available parking, be free or low cost to rent, and ideally have an area where we can safely store our program materials, which consists basically of 5 plastic rolling bins. So if anybody listening has a space that they are aware of in Henderson, go on the website adamsplacelv.org and reach out, and because they're really pretty desperate to find a location right now.
Thank you for sharing that information too. And if you guys want to learn any more, you guys could check out that website. Again, it's adamsplacelv.org.
Right.
Look ahead, what trends or changes do you foresee in the field of family mediation in the coming years?
Great. I love that question too. You're asking me such good questions. I think more and more people are going to realize that mediation is an alternative to expensive, protracted litigation. And again, it's not a good fit for everybody, but it is a good starting place for everybody. So, come and see if mediation is a good fit for you. If I can help or other mediators can help, great. If we think that you need to see a lawyer, if it's beyond, your area of expertise. For example, some of my clients need financial assistance to evaluate businesses, let's say.
Right.
Let's say somebody owns a chain of bakeries. I am not capable of evaluating a chain of bakeries to determine what the community property interest is. But I have colleagues who are certified divorce financial analysts or forensic accountants that I can engage, or the clients can engage, to collaborate.
And it sounds like you have a lot of expertise and experience, and you have your own unique approach of dealing with mediation. Is Mediation Around the Table? You're the founder, right?
Yes,
of it.
I'm it.
Okay.
I'm the one and only. My website is mediationaroundthetable.com. And I do a weekly blog on the website every Wednesday morning. I've been writing a 3-minute read for over 9 years on all different topics relating to humanity, whether it's about grandparents raising children, or whether it's about, my one this week was about small talk. I've written about, do you believe in luck? You name it. And because I love to write. And that's another way of just sort of getting to know, hearing my voice in 3 minutes.
I love that. Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing all this information about mediation. A lot of us probably didn't know about. Now we know about. And that your website one more time, for people.
Mediationaroundthetable.com.
Is that how they can contact you as well? As
yes.
You have email?
Yes.
Or
all the contact me is on that website. So yeah, I would love to answer any questions anybody may have. And Basma, can I tell you, you do a terrific interview. I really appreciated the questions that you asked.
You've been amazing too. Honestly, I've been thrilled to hear about all this vast amount of information that you've had to share with us. You sound like an amazing person. You're helping the community. You're doing your own thing. And I feel like anyone who reaches out or works with you is blessed. So thank you so much for the interview with me. And I hope to hear from you soon. I'll be reaching out to you probably at the Adams place, because this is my first time hearing about it. So
okay. Well, maybe you can consider being a volunteer. It's very, very rewarding.
I'm sure it is. And Mediation Around the Table also seems very interesting to look into. So if you guys want to check that out, go ahead and check out the website, reach out to Nancy, and let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.